you guys, you fellows would introduce yourselves, you'll do a much better job than us. So you go ahead and do that, and then we'll start into questions.
Well, of course, you know me, Keith Burns, farm in Nebraska.
Dave Albert, Misty Mountain Farm, Truck Run, Pennsylvania, 6th generation family farm established in 1854, direct marketing, beef, lamb, and poultry.
Alvin Schaefer, Schaefer Productions Incorporated is the name of our farm. We're in southern Northumberland County. We have hogs and grain, and just started an aeroponic greenhouse.
Jim Harbach from Strack Farms Dairy in southern Clinton County.
Dean James from across the river here on the riverside, Don Cotton Farms. We have layers and farm about 1,100 acres.
Mark Robach from here in Columbia County. We farm about 900 acres. We have a hog finishing barn, and we sell pine seed and cover crops.
Okay. Thank you. So does anybody have any questions off the bat? If you don't, I have questions to get this started. Anybody? Any takers? Okay, Susan's writing it down.
I have a question.
Oh, Mark has a question. Okay.
For Russ.
When you are working with some of those larger covers and you're running your temporary fencing, do you roll the cover crop down before you put that fence in so that you're not pulling energy from it, and how do you do that?
This work, we can probably keep that on that and get it Chris.
Yeah, you just can't run both at the same time.
Okay.
So,
Whenever we're grazing covers second temporary fence, we run that down side by side. Set our fence right down the center of the row and move on. We found with the cows, I grew up in a system where if you knocked a corn stalk over, your grandpa was going to beat you. It's quite actually fun running cornfields and high-grown perennial grasses and high-grown cover crops down side by side. We just run trails in. Those cows, they don't have a set head on their harvester. They actually pick those up just as good as if that was a standing crop. They do a really good job of picking up. Example, one time I used to be accused of wasting a lot of corn. We were grazing corn. We had a field day on the farm. I think there was 31 guys there that day. I was confident enough in my harvesters. I offered a $100 reward for every ear of corn those guys could come back. There was about 4 or 5 of them that took me up on it. I knew the joke was up on them, but they were out there for a couple hours in this cornfields looking for $100 bills, but not one of them came back with an ear corn.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, my harvester does a good job.
So I have a quick question I want to ask of the group, and if you could kind of go through and answer this as you think your answer. But so when I talk to a lot of people about starting into covers and those things, I've heard a lot of different reasons why cover won't work, why no-till won't work. But I'm curious on your end, what was it that made you decide finally to start planting cover crops? Because we all know they're expensive, there's seed, there's not enough time in the year, whatever it is. What was it for you guys that made that decision to start planting the covers?
As we've been talking about cover crops, I've actually been dealing with cover crops or working with cover crops for a very long period of time. If I look back, I've actually been using cover crops in my garden for over 30 years. I used to use sugar beets, turnips, or sugar beets, rape, and winter rye. I never really thought of it much as a cover crop. Since I've been farming full time, I've always used cover crops. The main reason I was growing cover crops is to feed my livestock, but probably one of the biggest changers or deal breakers for me that made me work even harder to make sure those soils was covered. It was back in my tillage days. spring of, it was the spring of 2011, I believe. That's where it really drove home for me. I sold it now. It was a really nice tractor. But I used to have a 4-wheel drive 150 horsepower tractor with a 4-bottom 18-inch plow. I stuck that tractor in a particular field. It was that spring, and then the following fall, I terminated that field. It was in sorghum sedan grass all summer. I terminated that field. I put winter rye, annual ryegrass, and turnip. So it was a very basic mix. The following spring, we had a 5-inch rainfall event over a 3-day period. I had my cow herd in there, and I did not puck that soil up or cause any pugging whatsoever. And it wasn't because it was a compacted field, it's because those cover crops in that very short period of time started healing that soil, and I had very good water infiltration. So that was kind of the deal breaker for me.
Well, for us, since we come from a much drier area than this, the number one reason people don't do cover crops is they think it's going to take too much moisture. And we were worried about that too. So in 2008, we received a small SARE grant. We did a research project through SARE where we put out a bunch of different strips of cover crops, and we had the moisture sensors out there and the whole works. As a result of doing that project, we discovered that the moisture that the cover crops used, we were going to gain back most years by increased infiltration and decreased evaporation before the next time we planted a crop. So just simply by doing that, by being out there on a weekly basis, observing what they did for the soil, and kind of assuring ourselves that they weren't using as much moisture, or at least they were gaining back some of the moisture that they did use for us, that's what kind of set us down the right path.
That's an interesting question for me. As a graduate in high school in 1980, I had the privilege of having an ag advisor in 1976 as a freshman in high school who said maybe one of your FFA projects ought to be about cover crops. And he was instrumental in helping me make a decision to grow a winter cover crop in the greenhouse that winter as a demonstration. Went ahead and did that, and I think I got some kind of award for it. But anyway, long story short, now we grow cover crops specifically to keep the ground covered and to increase our rate of gain and our profit per acre on our livestock operation. It's paramount to us to be able to go ahead and have cattle and sheep and poultry making money in your sleep, and that's why we do it. When we got the ground covered, no matter where we have the cattle or the sheep or the poultry on the farm, their rate of gain increases, and at the end of the day, we got more profit per acre.
What got us interested in growing cover crops? We're in a very hilly environment in our part of the country, down here in southern Northumberland County. So we were doing tillage, and it didn't matter how much or how little tillage we did, we still had an erosion issue. So we started no-tilling and thought that would be the answer, and it definitely made an improvement, but we were still getting, an erosion issue. So that's when I met a friend of mine, Gerard, doing some work with him, and Gerard got us introduced into doing some cover crops. Basic at first, we just started with, some rye. And once we started using the rye, we could just see the structure of the soil itself changing. We had some ground that when it would get hard, or when it would get dry, it would get that hard. We were actually demonstrating a subsoiler at the time because we had some soil that was that hard and compacted that we could not get the subsoiler to even go in the ground. So we thought, well, it was just that brand. Had another brand come in couldn't get it in the ground. Literally got in maybe 2-3 inches and it just would not penetrate. That's how hard and tight the ground was. So we started using these cover crops, and today we can go to those same farms on the hottest, driest part of the year, and you can literally push a shovel into the ground if you can avoid all the rocks. It just, the way it transformed the soil structure just made me a believer. We just now try our best to get as much ground cover crop as at all possible.
To give you a little bit of history of our farm, we've been no-tilling since the early 70s, and we just started cover cropping in the last 10 years, and it wasn't because we knew anything, it was because we wanted extra feed. And it was the results or the observations that we've seen since then. We've seen, like Russ, we've had very good infiltration rates. There's no rain that we get that we have any water leaving the fields anymore. And the soil structure and the soil organic matter, we've seen tremendous increases in the soil organic matter. So it really wasn't, we didn't do it for the right reason.
We're kind of like Jim, started no-till on their farm back in the 70s, and that was long before I arrived there. But it's funny how you start out doing something without realizing the benefits you're going to receive from it. I've looked back through some things, and we probably cover crop stuff a little bit since back in, probably back in the late 80s, and that was because we had a slug issue following small grain. Well, it helped out, but as things progressed, I mean, we looked around the farm trying to figure out what the limiting issue was on the farm, and probably 8 years out of 10 it was water. So we were looking to build the organic matter to add water to the soil. And I can guarantee you that after we've had 2 years of big covers on this one field that we have at the farm, and I think our yield this past year, given the history, a normal year without the covers would have probably been about 125 bushel. We pulled almost 140 bushel off that field after 2 years of big cover. And you go out there today and that big rye still lays there on the soil. So I think we're really heading in the right direction. And if it wasn't for Tyler sits back there, we wouldn't be where we are. I mean, there was days a couple years ago he crawled out of the track with a 15-foot drill instead of his butt hurt from being in there so long. But if you get committed to make it happen, you can. And I think probably out of the 1,100 acres, we probably got almost 1,000 acres of green out there this year. So it can happen. You just have to decide to make it go.
I guess the main thing that propelled me into growing covers was I really enjoyed the challenge of it, coming up with different ideas and making it work. Was probably the reason we started. And then we liked the idea of diversity and multi-species, and so when we started bringing some of those different species in, because we were selling Pioneer seed at the time, we thought, well, why not try and sell some cover crop seed also? So it just kind of went very well hand in hand. But I love the benefits of the cover crops. I like the challenge of the cover crops, and I think the way that it benefits our soil is gonna be able to allow my children to have a spot on the farm in the future, and that's the main reason that I brought it in.
All right, did anybody else think any questions while they were answering? Oh, good. Get off my list.
That's right. Jim, because you're removing so many of your covers for feed, how do you think that affects your biology, plus or minus, or even pluses and minuses of removing those cover crops?
So his question for Jim was, since Jim's removing forage off that system, how does he think that's affecting the soil biology in that system since he's removing the biomass?
That's been one of the things that we really found hard to believe, because everybody teaches us that if you keep removing that, you're going to deplete your soils. But what we found in the last 3 to 4 years, and I work with Gerard as well, we've had, I believe it was 60-some soil samples that we've taken over an average, but we've increased our soil organic matter levels with that type of management by 1% in 3 years. And it's just the concept of keeping something growing there all the time. Now, we do that because we put the dairy manure back, so I'm not saying you're going to do that if you're cropping without animals, but in our experience, that's what we found.
My question is a diverse cover mix kind of a hedge against dealing with the prussic acid, those kinds of rich issues? Like, I guess my question is sort of for Russ, maybe, because that was his talk. Like, the annual or the single monoculture cover seems to be, could be a liability to the livestock. So can you plant, does diversity, I guess, hedge that risk?
The question was if, being that sorghum's and grass and some of the others have potential prussic acid or nitrate problems, if we were to put that into a diverse situation where there's many species of plants, would that help with the problem? Or I'm not sure that it would necessarily take away the nitrate or the prussic acid problem, but some of the things, we graze a lot of toxic plants on our farm. We do. And if you do any research on any plant, one of the ones that I was totally appalled by in my research of every time I find a new plant, I look for the toxicity of it. Alfalfa, the king of forages, always comes to the top of the search list. Alfalfa is toxic. Almost every plant out there has toxins in it of some form or another. But to get back to answer your question, I would still test those forages if it were me. If there was any amount, now if there was just a sorghum Sinean grass or something that would have the prussic acid or the nitrate levels in it, I might not test it. But in grazing all these toxic plants that I have, if like in one case we were managing a warm season grass field, we had witch grass. It's a photosynthesizing toxin that causes the animals to sunburn very easily, like a lot of medications that we humans take. So what we did is we diluted their ration. We put them in there for a third of a day. A third of their ration was that. So do I think that would help offset some of those toxins and stuff? Yes, I think that could potentially help in certain situations. Definitely, you can see it bloat in. A lot of problems come from bloat in alfalfa and clover. If you dilute that with the grass, your bloat's not going to be as much of a problem. So I do believe that it would help, yes.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, in the back.
Yeah, I have a question for Keith Burns. He said that we're trying to get our soil biologically active. What's the best way to do that for farmers that have been dumping the unneeded minerals like phosphorus and stuff like that? You're saying that these fungi can produce themselves in the soil. What's the best way to come back?
So the question was, if we've been putting fertility on our soils, what's the best way to kind of transition from that over to a more biological system? Is that kind of what you're asking? The best way to do that is just to get a lot of diversity out there. I would not shut myself off cold turkey. That's always a bad idea. I would phase it down. So if your ground, if you've been commercially fertilizing it, I would not just turn it off and say no more. You need to kind of step that down over a period of time. Getting more plants growing in the soil is going to be really important, so the cover crops are going to be extremely important there too. Mycorrhizal fungi is a very interesting organism because it's one of the few organisms that has to have a living host plant, but it can actually jump from host to host. So if you're growing corn, and corn is mycorrhizal, so you'll have mycorrhiza growing on the corn. When that corn dies, and if you don't have anything growing, for 4, 5, 6 months until soybeans pick it up again, next May or June, then that's a long period of time where there's nothing growing out there for that mycorrhiza. So that's where if you have a cover crop, cereal rye, oats, anything like that, the mycorrhiza will actually shift hosts and can be hosted on that rye. And then once you terminate the rye, if there's something else growing, they can actually jump hosts. It is a very unique organism in being able to do that. So number one, take yourself down gradually, not all at once. Number two, have plants out there that will help facilitate the change. And then number three, particularly if you want to wean yourself off nitrogen, you've got to get legumes into the system. Because nitrogen is not going to just come out of the soil naturally. You've got to produce that. You get the legumes working for you. And then a really important factor, if you want to make that transition much quicker, integrate livestock into the operation. That will significantly increase the speed at which your soil becomes very biologically active, especially cattle, because a lot of the organisms in the rumen are very similar to the organisms that are in the soil, and that cow is going to be a great biological primer for your system. If you're grazing like what Russ is doing, and you're really incorporating that manure and urine in very evenly distributed throughout the field, that'll really speed up that process.
I don't understand what I'm doing. I plant corn, I follow that with soybeans, I follow that with wheat. After the wheat, I can get this multi-species of cover crop in. But that's, so it's on every fourth year that I get a cover crop, well, that third year after wheat. How am I going to build this soil up quick enough to do anything? Now this year I did put a bushel of rye take over the cornfield after I got it done. Well, it might be a little bit of green out there now, but it certainly wasn't anything in the fall.
Yeah, so his question or his concern is he's in a corn, soybean, wheat rotation, and the only time he feels like he's getting a really good cover crop is coming in the summer after that wheat. He's getting a multi-species cover crop, getting a lot of growth. How does he get stuff growing in between the corn and the bean crops? Is that basically the question? You know, we have a saying on our farm that more is better than less, but some is better than none. So even if all you're doing is getting a bushel of cereal rye put out there in November, that's a whole lot better than getting nothing planted. We plant a tremendous amount of rye, and I think our winters are probably more harsh than yours. We plant a lot of rye in November. I'm not afraid to plant rye all the way through Thanksgiving time because it will germinate in 34-degree soils. It'll sprout and it'll be ready to go when you get nice weather like this. That stuff takes off and just goes crazy. We also use a very specific kind of rye. We don't use any rye out of Canada or the Dakotas. There's nothing wrong with that. We use rye that has its genetic origins out of Oklahoma because Oklahoma has short winters. And so this particular rye that we use has been bred to have a very short dormancy period. So it grows later in the fall before it goes dormant, and it wakes up and starts growing sooner in the spring than what the Canadian ones do, because they have to be bred for long winters. So we use southern type rye, never seen a winter kill. We've had Gabe Brown at Bismarck growing the stuff. If it doesn't winter kill in Bismarck, it's going to be fine here. It's going to be fine for us. But what that does is it gives us more fall growth and more spring growth, more so than even just the northern type varieties. And we feel like that gives us a little bit of an advantage over that. And if rye is the only thing we plant, we're still happy to have it. Now, if we can grow some shorter season corn or bean varieties, maybe we can get something else out there. But if we get past the 1st of October, I don't even worry about anything else. I'm just glad to plant rye. And what we found is if you can do that big multi-species cover crop mix, even every 3rd or 4th year, that's still doing tremendous things for your soil. You don't have to have a 10-way cover crop mix every year. That's okay. That's not needed. But if you can get that in every 3rd or 4th year, that's great. And then just have something growing, even if it's just rye. Just remember, more is better than less, but some is better than none.
Would you other fellows address that, please, about how you've tackled that situation on your farm? Because I know a lot of you guys are growing corn and soybeans too, and maybe have changed rotations, or how you've done that on your farm.
He just said about all you need to know. I can't get anything to grow much past Thanksgiving except rye. Our cover crop rotation, we try to keep every row crop. We farm about 150 acres of row crop ground, and the rest of it's in pasture or hay. And so that's a great answer. And the idea that whatever you've got out there is better than none. This past year, the day that the beans were taken off, the custom operator brought a corn head. He took the corn off the next afternoon. By that evening, I was putting rye and cereal rye and ryegrass seed in those fields that evening. As we drove by this morning, those same fields, there was nice green shoots coming up down those 7-inch rows, and that's going to be there in another couple of weeks. It'll be covering that field.
We're kind of like these guys here. You know, we will plant rye. We were planting rye yet this year in deer season. Drove by the fields on my way to come here today. You can see the roads starting to come up. We're like the gentleman that posed the question. We do a corn, soybean, wheat, double crop soybean, and then still follow with a cover crop even after the double crop soybeans come off. And if you have a good stand come spring when it's time to plant, you might be glad that you might be surprised at how much rye you have there. I know every spring till the end of May, we're having to stop and blow a radiator out of our tractor because we plant green. And you might just be surprised at how much rye you get coming, even though that's all you got in this year.
Yeah, what Keith said about planting a shorter season variety of beans and corn, I don't think we put enough emphasis on that. Everybody remembers playing basketball in high school with a ball hog, and that's what a lot of these corn varieties are that we're planting. You know, it's a warm season crop, and we're trying to plant it early, and we're trying to keep it out there late in the year. We need to get some cold season grasses in there and let them do their job. So we got to rethink that. You know, that trying to get every bushel out of that long season corn. We have to. It's an investment. You know, it's not a cost, it's an investment. So we have to rethink that.
And we kind of take a systems approach to it. I mean, we were sitting at the table the other day trying to figure out in one of our rotations, how do we get a cover crop out that's going to have some growth on it so we can kill it last part of April, put early soybeans out. And that's a 2-year out project there. But we started out planting short season soybeans to put our barley in. And we found out, if we look back several years, they were our best yielding beans. We can look at spreadsheets and graphs and all kinds of stuff probably, but those have been our best beans, and they've been short season beans. We had some Group 2O beans out. We get, like Jim says, you know, on soybeans, we get stuck in a corn mentality because always, you know, back in the 80s and the 90s, it was longer season corn yields better. Well, we thought the same thing with beans, but it's not. Beans are a whole different deal. But get the beans off, get the cover crop out. We're cutting beans in the middle of August because we found they're our best beans. This year, we're going to go from 200 acres of short season beans to 300 acres of short season beans. Use 100 of those, put our barley out in, and then do cover crop and the rest and get it up and going. But the one thing about it, you know, these guys have talked about growing rye and, you know, planting rye in November and December. I've heard that rye, even with snow cover, the roots are going to be growing. And it's not necessarily what's above the ground that gains your organic matter, but you've got to consider what goes on underneath the ground, because there's a lot going on down there. And the more that's out there, the more you got you can grow, and the better things will be.
Ditto. We changed up a couple different things on our operation also, you know, going to shorter season soybeans. Something else that we did was we started broadcasting covers into our standing soybeans. So our earliest maturing soybeans that we harvest first, that's where we'll concentrate on getting in with the grain drill to get out some multi-species covers mixes, and soybean ground that we put in maybe a longer maturity, and we won't go over a 3-1. So we're ranging from 2.2 to a 3.1. We won't go beyond a 3.1, but in those longer maturity soybeans where we know we're not going to be able to get to them with the drill in a timely manner, there's where we'll broadcast some acres, and you can have really good results with cover crops into standing soybeans. The other thing I think we need to remember is that as we improve our soils, we improve the crop's ability to put on a yield. So in the past, where we've said to ourselves, well, a 2.0 or a 2.2 bean's not going to work because it doesn't put on the yield of a 3.3 or a 3.5, when you improve your soil, you will improve your crop's ability to put on a yield. The other thing, by planting into a larger cover crop, you will improve your plant's respiration. So you can still get away with planting 105, 108, 110 day corn variety. We've done this numerous times ourselves where we will delay planting beyond May 15th, even though crop insurance tells you you're going to lose a bushel a day. I don't believe that, because when you plant into that larger cover crop, and there was a really cool intentional or unintentional plot that was at Cotner's last year, where they planted into a crop that had been, a cover crop that had been burned off early versus one where they planted into a large cover crop. And you can see in the health of the plant, and therefore the health of the plant goes down to the respiration of the plant, and the plant's ability to withstand higher temperatures, drought conditions, and therefore turn that into a yield. So if you have healthier soils and you have cover crops in place that are helping with your plant's respiration and your soil's moisture retention, you can turn that into a good yield, even if you do delay planting. And then to go along with what all these guys have said, even if you don't get your cover crop out till December or January, triticale, rye, you put them out in, broadcast them, drill them in icy conditions, in the right temperature, the right growing, or the right day in January, you'll get that cover crop to grow.
We're still on this question.
He skipped me on the way through. These guys did a wonderful job of covering it, but one thing that I would like to add, that cover crop isn't going to do you any good if it's still in the bag.
One of the crops I find is a challenge when it comes to interseeding is soybeans, because I would like to find a crop that is going to give me some cover and it's going to be there when the beans come off, but won't interfere with harvesting. Have any of you played around with some crops that seem to kill and die back almost when the soybeans are ready?
We did some interseeding. The interseeder was around one year. We raised our early beans. We planted 30-inch rows. We put some on some end rows. The clover, we had, I think it was crimson clover, and there may have been some more clover mixed in. Turned out really well. It didn't interfere with cutting the beans. The next spring it was still there. We thought we were onto something. Went ahead and did 60 acres the next year with the grass mixture and everything. It was a whole different year. It was on the regular field. The beans shaded everything out real heavy. The slugs ate everything up. So my recommendation is I probably won't do it again. Not in the soybeans.
The one thing I would add was exactly like I believe his name was John, the speaker there after lunch or before lunch, talked about with the interseeders. Make sure you're paying attention to your herbicides, because that has a very critical role on it. Now for ourselves, we're not direct seeding them, we're broadcasting over the top. So we try to focus on crops that we know will work, like rye and triticale, we were broadcast. We did play around with some common veg, some hairy veg, and we did get a little bit of a stand out of them, but then they emerged, And then we had a late frost in the end of March, and that actually terminated a few of them because they were so shallow rooted. But the rye and the triticale doesn't stand in the problem. And again, part of that would be getting those crops in soon enough that they can establish themselves well. Because if you think about it, if you wanted to start broadcasting into a 2.2 maturity bean, you probably need to be thinking about broadcasting somewhere in the first or second week of August. And if you can get a broadcasted seed to establish in the second week of August, it's got a lot of growing time to get a good root system going. But the herbicide is probably the most critical thing going on with that.
Keith mentioned in one of his talks that a healthy legume crop can fix a tremendous amount of nitrogen, several hundred pounds per acre. And he also mentioned that if there is a residual nitrogen in the soil, that can actually hinder the fixation process. The microbes won't fix as much nitrogen. So I'm wondering how you can maximize nitrogen fixation.
So the question was, in a really healthy legume crop, I stated that it can fix several hundred pounds of nitrogen. How do you work that into a system where if you have too much nitrogen, then things don't want to grow right or nodulate? The big key, any legume crop that's going to produce that much nitrogen, it's doing that because it's probably putting it either into the forage, in the case of alfalfa, or in the seed, in the case of soybeans. You're hauling most of that away, and it's not being returned to the system. In a system that's largely grazing, like what Russ is doing, you typically aren't grazing stands of straight legumes because it's just too rich, it's too hot, you'll get a lot of bloat. And so then you have, maybe only 20 to 30% of your sward is going to be legumes. So obviously that legume production is going to be quite a bit less. Generally, the nitrogen that is going to be produced by a legume plant it is not going to be in a form that's going to be really readily available for other plants right away. A lot of it's going to be tied up in the residue and tied up in the roots, and that's going to break down a little more slowly. The other thing is we rarely would follow one legume crop with another. So say I produce soybeans and, I'm giving myself a, 70 to 80 pound nitrogen credit because I had really nice soybeans. I'm not going to worry about that, having that nitrogen out there the next year, because I would never follow soybeans with another crop of soybeans. Agronomically, it just doesn't make that much sense, because some of that would be wasted nitrogen, because it would make that next bean crop a little lazier than what it should be. So we always want to, we're not worried about having that excess nitrogen in the system if it is there, because I'm typically going to follow it with a crop that is not going to be a legume, and so it needs to pull whatever nitrogen it can. But in the cases where you're producing a lot of nitrogen, oftentimes the majority of that nitrogen is going to be exported off of the field, either in the form of a forage crop, like alfalfa can produce just tremendous amounts of nitrogen. It has to, especially in areas where they're getting, 5-6 good cuttings of irrigated hay. Down in Arizona, they'll have 9 to 10 cuttings of alfalfa. That alfalfa plant's probably producing, 600-700 pounds of nitrogen a year, but they're hauling it all away. So it's not building up in the soil, and it's forcing that legume plant to continue to produce that nitrogen. That's the way that plant was bred to work, is it just continues to produce as you haul it away.
Question for Russ. Talk mostly about wheat, and I was wondering more like your sheep. How do you incorporate them in, and how do you deal with your temporary fencing with sheep?
The question was, I didn't talk much about the goats and sheep and how I incorporate them into the system, and what am I using as far as temporary fencing. I do talk about the cattle a lot because they cause the most impact on the farm. The goats and sheep, everything has its place in the system. If we're in a field grazing with our cows, they're not doing what I want them to do as far as being grazing properly or how that field should look when we're going across, put the goats and sheep behind them. But most generally, our goats and sheep are off doing grazing that the cattle can't do. On my farm, we have a lot of, especially in the spring. Now it goes away in the fall, but in the spring we'll have a lot of wet spots. They're not necessarily holding water, but they won't hold a cow either. So we'll fence those areas out. My farm, if you look at it on the map, it'll look like we have crop circles on shore, but the goats and sheep work wonderfully in that situation because I can go in there and not do any harm whatsoever to that soil with those goats and sheep. The invasive plant species, I have about 16 acres of my woods fenced. We're not doing, I guess, what would it be called? We don't want to put our cows in the woods. But the main reason that they're in the woods is to eliminate invasive species. I don't want to have to go in there and spray them. I might as well utilize that forage as pounds and sell it versus me going in there and spray it. And as far as the temporary fencing, goats and sheep are a lot easier to keep in than what you think. Well, my first set of goats weren't so easy. So maybe I should rephrase that. Back when we were still picking corn, we had a corn crib. We had our first set of goats that we had were not the ideal set of goats for a pasture situation. They actually would go through the fence and give their right and left and front and back legs to get corn or dog food. Okay, so the goats got out one day and left 200 bushels of corn out of the crib, and I told the wife they didn't be doing that at night, and we really thought about the goat situation. But anyhow, we brought goats back into the system after those guys left, and we traveled clear over into Ohio where there's a gentleman he raises pasture goats. These things are not tame. They're kind of like most brood cows. You walk in, they respect you, but don't pet them. And the sheep we can keep in with 2 poly wires, 2 temporary poly wires, and our goats we do use three wires on that because the guard dog that babysits the goats actually is the one that gives me the problems. He'll jump over it. But they're easily kept in with 2 poly wires. And if you look at a goat whenever they get out of the fence or a sheep, most generally they go under the bottom wire. So if you get the bottom wire hot, typically it's not a problem. And another problem with keeping goats and sheep in, you need to keep your fencer at above 6,000. Between, they say 5,500 volts of electricity. My fencer will hit at 11,000 volts, and I like to have it at 11,000 volts. So. Well, yeah, it's good to have it 11,000 volts, but if you're kind of like me and you get up against the fence about 6 or 7 times a week, it really gets to be wearing on your nerves.
Go ahead.
Question on cattle grazing. What would be a recommendation for seeding when only have 2 acres on a lot of cattle? And what would be a rotation rate if you want to do 2 acres?
The question was what would the stocking rate be on that?
What's that?
What would the stocking rate be on the acreage?
50 brood cows on 15 acres.
Okay. He's asking what the plant on 15 acres running 50 brood cows. That's an extremely high stocking rate. I'm not sure that can sustain those animals for an extended period of time. So, like in my system, I'm able to support one animal unit per 1.3 acres. That was my grazing rate last year. The year before that, I had 1.1 animal unit per acre. So what you may have to do if you don't have, do you have a confinement system?
Yeah.
Okay, so you may need to bring them back into confinement. And as far as establishing, being at the small pastures, you can still do a really good job. First thing you need to do, 90% of all seeding failures is in to seed permanent pastures because there's fertility problems. So you need to pull a soil sample. If has that been in pasture for a long time?
No.
Okay. Typically, one thing that I see, if pasture fields have been in pasture for a really long time, specifically, normally a lot in a continuous grazing system, they're very, very high in potassium. So you might want to consider planting, if you're high in potassium, you need to think about planting a crop of Timothy, and this is probably about the only time that I would recommend to make hay. Timothy will mine more potassium out of the soil than most any other plant, and that includes alfalfa. As far as a particular species, it depends on the soil type, what you're trying to achieve. If I'm establishing a pasture, I always have that deep-rooted plant. I have my chicory. I like my fescue, orchard grass. I have the tendency to kind of stay away from perennial ryegrass, just because I see it as a high input grass and needs a lot of nitrogen in order for it to be very productive. And of course, you need your legumes, and if you're crazy like me and thinking about putting root parsley and planting yarrow and things like that, that could potentially help you because those are deep-rooted plants. And some of the other things that you might want to consider whenever you're establishing those pasture fields is try and stage it, because some of those, like fescue, I see it takes up to about 3 years to get them to establish well. Maybe if you can plant some of them annuals in, and as they go out of those swords, those other plants that are establishing, they can fill in those spots. Did that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have, this is on pasture, you have steep ground, it's good, it's hard to get on the track and stuff.
My farm is flat. I'm a flat lander.
On my hand.
Yeah. Maybe we could split our farms and trade. I'd like to have a little bit of slope. But for the most part, my farm lays flat. I do have one slope. I think it's at 25% or something like that. It's a pretty good slope on one side, but it's not.
Yeah, what would you recommend seed to put on?
What kind of seed to put on it?
Steep.
If it's steep, one thing that I would recommend is some of those annuals that establish quickly. Maybe some annual. You're looking for permanent pasture, I'm assuming?
It is pasture.
It is pasture. You're going to need.
Clover, don't do that.
Well, the problem with clover is if you've been putting clover on and it hasn't been working, have you done any soil fertility checks on it? Check your soil fertility. That's typically, and if you've put clover seed on it and tried it a few times and it didn't work, clover's famous for being hard seeded. If you have a pH problem and you've been putting clover seed and planting clover seed, and you go out and apply a lime on it and the pH starts correcting itself, all of a sudden you've got this clover growing everywhere. So it may be a fertility problem, but myself on a steep ground, I would look in more of the fibrous rooted, tighter rooted plants, even perhaps brome grass or maybe canary grass if it's wet in places. Sometimes canary grass is hard to get on a slope. It likes the lower bottoms. And of course, my fescue. I love my fescue.
I was telling me to put track mix. That ain't.
I'm not sure if quackgrass has enough of a fibrous root system. They do. They have really good root systems, but I'm thinking that you're going to need a really tight, really nice fibrous root system to go in there. We got quackgrass. We got lots of it. I can share some with you. It grazes well and it tests well, so it's good stuff.
Lisa's got some questions.
We have a question off the tablet. What cover crop mixes are you using, and what varieties are in that mix, and do you have a favorite mix? Come on.
For me, as far as cover crop mixes go, it just depends on what I'm trying to achieve in any particular situation. Just for an example, if I have a field that's really low in phosphorus, I'm going to plant a high population of buckwheat in that particular mix. If I have compaction, I want my fibrous roots. If I'm trying to scavenge nitrogen, I'm going to try to get my tap roots in there. And, you know, some of these other plants, you know, sunflowers can help with compaction. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. And there's a lot of good resources out there to help you with what particular plants do what. And Keith, I believe that's all on your website. And there's a lot of other resources out there to do that.
I think this question is best answered by the local guys because it varies so much from region to region, so I'm just going to pass on this one.
For us, the cover crop mix that we use primarily is pretty simple. Cereal rye for our row crop ground and ryegrass. What we've had some success with, I think the idea that was mentioned already is resource concern, making sure that you know your resource concern before you make a decision on the cover crop. We have done many multi-species mixes with some marginal success. You find out real quickly what grows and doesn't grow in one particular season. But just a quick story, we grew some canola and we singulated the seed out to 2 pounds of canola seed per acre, singulated with some ammonium sulfate in the drill box, and continuous sod that we burned down with both grazing and a moderate amount of glyphosate. Went ahead and did that in the fall, harvested the canola in the spring, pressed 30 bushel to the acre of canola for oil, sold the canola meal to a local dairy, went back to the farm or the restaurant where we sold the oil, collected the oil for bio, then had 10 pound of canola come out the back of the combine. We only planted 2 pound originally, but we had probably 10 pound that we couldn't capture. And then we went ahead and put buckwheat in that. Meanwhile, the orchard grass stand that was originally there, the old sod, and nailed it on the clover. We had a particular year where clover just flourished. So now, post-harvest, we got canola, orchard grass, the old sod fired back up. We've got clover. We got cow-calf pears with milk sliding out the side of the calf mouths because of so much nutrient density in that field, all off a 2 pound of canola that might have cost us $10.
I'll let Mark answer mine because that's where I get my seed.
We're primarily dairy, so most of it's for corn salad. So we have started out with a rye triticale mixture, but the triticale is petered out over the years. But we harvested and use it for our own seed, so we've had that same variety now we dabble with it for probably close to 20 years, and it really fits well for us. We try putting some clover in, and we plant rye too thick that and our nitrogen in our soils is high enough that it really doesn't want to stay, so we can't successfully grow much with that thick rye.
Well, what we really like isn't necessarily what we can get all the time. Our Haney tests say we need more legumes, so we're trying to incorporate more legumes all the time. And I guess the favorite mix we have for the small grains is tillage radish, crimson clover, and rye. And we're doing something less than a bushel of rye and about 8 pounds of crimson and 4 pounds of tillage radish. And then also, we talked about the CSP program, and we've got our soybean acres signed up in that. So we're doing a rye triticale mix like Jim talked about in there, and then we just fall back on rye as the year gets late.
Well, to answer the question for Alvin, he plants the most expensive varieties and seeds them at the highest rates. Really, it comes down to what your needs are and what the crop is following and what it's preceding and what your soil samples call for. So those are the first things that I ask a customer when they're talking about seeds. But as far as different things that we like on our own operation, we like rye, triticale, we like wheat, radishes, really like turnips. Right now, if you seeded turnips in the fall and you had some turnips that actually made a bulb, if you go out there right now, chances are you'll find at least one earthworm underneath them. Same thing with rape. The earthworms just love turnips, they love rape. We also like vetch. I really like chickling vetch. I like the look of chickling vetch. If you've never seen chickling vetch, it actually looks like a little stone. So it's really cool to look at. But we've had some good results with late seeding some chickling vetch, even though the winter hardiness isn't typically really high. It's actually performed very well for us after some corn, along with rye and rape. Crimson clover, sunflowers, we love sunflowers, sorghum, sudan grass. We've actually planted corn in after wheat. If we know that the next cash crop after our wheat crop is going to be corn, we'll put a small rate of corn in our cover crop just to kind of prime the soil for the corn's coming next. But those are some of our different favorite species.
So I think we're kind of winding down. We've lost most of our audience, but if anybody else has any last minute burning questions, bring them up. I think I want to thank all our speakers. We really appreciate the panelists for coming up. We've had a really good day here.